Hey Mac, let's take a look at this week 5 assignment 3 drawing here. This is a nice development from the last series of drawings. The viewpoint has changed a little, the perspective feels like it's changed a little bit. I really like the way that you're developing the color in this drawing. The way that the yellow from the helmet tends to just kind of permeate everything. There's a little bit of yellow in every stone, in the wood, and in the little details throughout the room, and it kind of brings everything together, and it also creates a nice amount of color contrast between the grays to add this little bit of yellow into it. Definitely something to carry through as you move into the final. There's a really nice textural application here throughout the whole thing, and it seems for me like the big part of the drawing, other than kind of the main elements, it really works as a secondary kind of not necessarily a focal point, but just kind of an area of interest to view in the drawing. The wood, the stone, the glass, which I think could probably be made a little bit more reflective by trying to obscure just a little bit in some areas where there would be high reflectivity highlights that are shining off. But I really like how it changes the coloring and the way you've drawn the pants in the figure, and how it kind of affects everything else around it in terms of being a lot more opaque, but still very much a transparent layer. I thought it was really nicely done overall. I think in terms of kind of feedback and things to kind of keep in mind, I think one of the biggest things is that you have to make sure, again, and I think this was something we talked about before, is that the background doesn't really start to obscure or take away from the main element. And I think the helmet itself within kind of the casing is exactly what it needs to be. It's very light in value. It has a lot of contrast. It's got lines that radiate out of it, so that works really well as a focal point. I think the figure still gets obscured a little bit, and this could just be to the slightly rougher nature of the drawing, although definitely much more refined than anything we've seen up to this point. But I think there are some areas where it gets a little darker, where colors start to mix, especially the ground plane and the cape, or the browns and the yellows of the arms kind of being very similar to the things that are around it as well, that it does get a little obscured. It could be that there's maybe just a little darker in the background, and the figure could be a little bit lighter in the foreground, so that there's a little more of that push and pull, and that should separate things a little bit more. I think some of the darkness that's occurring in the back here is great. I think some of the areas that are around here could be a little bit darker than than what they are, but everything else really feels, I think, good to me. I think there's little kind of details like the doorway and the sword and shield crest that if they were not there, it would feel like a very boring, I think, overall interior. I think having it be stone on one side and the wood pillars on the other side creates some nice kind of asymmetrical balance. The pillar and then the shield and then the doorway and then the other pillow, they really do a great job of kind of very equal kind of balancing act that's going on. So I do like the overall composition. I like the one-point perspective, which is focusing on the figure a little bit more, which is great. Texture and color also looking very good. I think it's more now just a point of trying to get a little bit more clarity, a little bit more contrast within kind of the main figure itself, not necessarily the helmet, and just shoring up some details as well. Just try to get a few more refinements if you can, things like getting the hands to become a little bit less kind of gooey, getting the face to come out a little bit more. But really, I think a great assignment 3, and definitely should be a lot of fun to move towards the final with.